Hello students, this is Rupali Valgale, Assistant Professor IICMR MC Department Nigri, Pune. I again welcome you for the Angular tutorial sessions. In the previous video, we have discussed how we have injected the service method into the details component file and how we have created this service component. Now, with the help of this service, we have displayed the list of users onto the browsers also. But in this case, every time it is not possible to write the data in our service file. So we have a solution for this also. Now just assume we have my list of friends or this list of user into a particular JSON file. So in this session, in this video, we will discuss about how to get the data from the external JSON file. So we'll change something here. In this case, we will simply copy this data. We have copied the data and now we'll create a separate JSON file within this assets folder. Let's create a separate folder for your data. Now in that data folder, we will create a file, let's say user.json. And in that user.json, we have pasted our data. Now, you may get an error because of this single quote. So this single quote need to be replaced by your double quote. So I'll have the control F and here you can have the replace also. I'll find the single quote and let's replace it by double quotes. So see our errors got resolved. Now my user.json file is ready. But we need to call this user.json file into a service file. So how to call it? We need to change our code slightly. So we won't require this entire thing. We'll remove this. Here we'll let's say get user data. Get user data we have written and then in that method we will be getting the JSON file. So I'll declare a variable, let's say URL equals to, yes, where is our URL? It is in the assets folder. Isn't it? It is in assets folder, data folder. Inside that we are having user.json. Okay. After that you should save this one and then you have to get the data from there. So how you are going to get that data? In order to get the data from external JSON file, you will require, okay, of course we won't require this observable and user right now, so I have removed. So in this case, in order to get the data from external files, you need to import here the HTTP client component. So you have to import the HTTP client component. Now we have imported that and we have to create or we have to get the data from that external file. So how we are going to get that data? Of course, so this dot HTTP, but HTTP client variable need to be created here. So where you will be creating inside your constructor, like we have created that service object in your details component. Similarly, we'll create here the HTTP variable, which is of type private because we'll be using within this file only private HTTP, which is of type HTTP client. So this variable is being created. Now you can access this variable. With that variable, we will be creating or calling the get method, and from get, where we are getting the data? From the URL, and at the end you have to add the semicolon. But whatever the data we have received from that particular JSON file, we won't be using it inside the service method. So we have to return this data to the details component file. So we have said return statement here. Now after this, we have to change something into the details component file also, because whatever the service method was having initially, we have modified it. So we need to call this get user data. So how we are going to call here the get user data. So this is how your blank details component file might be looking. Now here we will create the variable of type, let's say user data, which we will be retrieving from the service file, which is of any type. But of course, the which is of any type, but of type array. Fine. Now after that, we will require here the constructor, and inside the constructor, of course, we will be injecting our service. So we will be injecting our dependency. So we'll create a private variable, let's say user service, which is of type user service. Fine. Now we have created a variable, and we will be using that variable in order to get the data. So where we are going to do that? Inside the constructor only. So whenever this component will be invoked, your service will be injected, and immediately you will be calling your method here. Instead of that, you can use the previous method also by defining the own method inside this details component and by calling it through ng on it. That also will be fine. Now this time we'll do something different. So of course, we will call this service, which we had declared a variable, but service which method? Get user data method we are going to call. But again, just remember, get user data is of type observable. Then we have to call a subscribe method. Remember, in last session we have declared and we have discussed about the observer and observable. So while retrieving the data from the observable, your observer will call the subscribe method. So in that subscribe method, we will get the data. Yes, but data will be retrieved from which? The data will be retrieved from your the friends data. So this dot here users data. So user data, we have declared a variable. Remember, here we have declared a variable, so that data is being retrieved here. But of course, that data will be retrieved from the get file. So that is yes, we got the error in here. So what error? Because here we are not using any asynchronous type of data. We are calling the HTTP. Still the error. Why so? Because we have included here the HTTP client. Okay, but we didn't include here the HTTP module. So where we need to include in here you have to include the or import HTTP client module. So see, on top it is being imported automatically, and then importing is not sufficient. You have to add it into the import array also. So you have to save the file. Yes, in still You have to save the file. Still, we have the error in your HTML. So we need to change that also. Here, user was expected, but in case of our component file, we have set it to the user data. So you have to change it to the user data. Now save this file. Now we got the compiled successfully message, and observe here you have retrieved the details of users also. Yes, details of user have user.json was having the same kind of data. Now it doesn't matter how many components, how many list of users have been added here. You will be modifying only the user.json file, and accordingly the changes will be updated automatically. How come? Because your HTTP client will be fetching the data asynchronously. So this is how we are going to access the JSON file in with the help of your service files. But always again, we cannot rely on the JSON file only. Sometimes you may have to retrieve the data from your external APIs also. So how we are going to do that? Of course, we have the same solution for it. We will be using this service only. But how? Just observe, we are having this request response.in site where we'll get the data or API for your trial purpose. Now we are having here the list of users which might be fitting for our requirement. Now here we will be having ID, email, first name, last name, so many things are there. We will be copying this URL. Simply copy this URL, and what changes you have to do in our file. So instead of this JSON file, we will be getting the data from our API. So where we have given this JSON file URL in your service file. Inside your service file, instead of this JSON one, we will give here the path of our API. So we have changed this path. So that path is being changed here. Then the second thing where we have to change again, of course, whenever you have accepted the data from the service, what change you have to do? We will be loading that data from the service to the component file. But here we are not expecting anything from the, and this one, from the API, we are simply getting whatever is being thrown by your service. But of course, where we have to change, we have to change in your component file. I'll show what changes is being required. Meanwhile, observe, because I didn't get any error, but I didn't get any data also. How come? Because whatever the data you have retrieved, which contains this information also, but we want only the data part where we are having this ID, email, and first name, last name, all those kind of thing. So we have to go till data. So how we are going to do that? In your HTML file, till your friends, till your user data, here inside that user data, we will be fetching the data part. Now save your file and observe your output. Just observe, you got the list of emails. How come? Because only the email field is matching with our parameter. We can change our details like here. Yes, your ID, name, and email have been updated from the API file. So this is how your services can be This is how your services can be used to fetch the data from external APIs. and some JSON files also. Thank you.